Just, you know, all applaud as they come in.
There's some latecomers I know too.
We'll give them all a hard time. All right, so I'm Jeff Boreland. I'm going to come out and talk about rules and stuff for you. It's one of my favorite things to start with, though, is that everybody says, well, it's Jeff Boreland. He's a rules expert. Well, it's something that I learned a while back is an expert is two things. X is an unknown quantity and a spurt is a drip under pressure. So I try. I will look at the book a lot and read from it because truly that's the best way to learn it and to know it. Because if you have anybody who wants to quote the rule to you and they're not looking at the book, I'm going to bet they're going to miss something, right? So, we'll start about, I was asked to start out with some fleet race stuff, and then we'll roll into some match race and team race. If I'm talking about stuff and you have questions that apply, please do, or you have a scenario that you thought of that kind of was in the same vicinity, let's talk about it. We'll do some stuff on the board. It's more fun to, rules are very dry, so it's kind of boring until you know, hey, I did this, and what happened there? So that's much more useful for all of us to have a real world scenario than just some dry discussion of what's going on. The rules, it was an interesting concept that somebody said one day that really resonated with me, is that the rules are broken up into two pieces. Well, the first thing that I always like to say is that we have, where are they? Part 2, if you look at your rule book, you got part 2, right? So we get this big fat book that's very scary looking. However, if we think about rules of part 2, which is when boats meet, which is what we do on the water, right? That's only this much of the whole book. All right, so these pages right here are rule part 2. Those are the ones you really have to know when you're racing. The rest of the other stuff is to set that up. Definitions in the front, so you really want to pay attention to those. Some of the other things, but the rest of the book is so that we can do this. All right, and then we have all the appendices in the back that are for match racing and team racing and radio controlled boats and kite foils, and there's all sorts of scary stuff in the back. But we be careful about that, but it really isn't that scary to look at the book and understand the rules because there's only 20 something. 23 is the end of part 2. But the rules are broken up into two basic categories that somebody explained it to me, and they're called rights and restrictions. You can have a right, port starboard. We all know that one, right? Rule 10 is on opposite tacks, port starboard. We know that the starboard boat is the right-of-way boat. However, they can be restricted at times. So we look at some of the other things. Rule 14. They can go sailing straight at the other boat, but if they just sail right into them, they're restricted. They can't do that. You can't hit them, right? That's a bad idea. When they become right-of-way, they're still right-of-way, but they're restricted. That's what number 15 talks about. So we have these rules, so they're rights and restrictions. So it's a really good way to think about it. And one of the things to think about as you read the rules, you'll go right to Rule 10 or right to Rule 12 or whatever they are. Think about reading the beginning of that section because the preamble that walks into that section actually has a lot of good information in it. So the preamble to the restriction rule says that while those others are in play, these may restrict those other rules. All right, so the preamble is actually a very important piece because it does tell you when these rules are useful and when they're not. Okay, when they apply and when they don't. So the preambles are very important, but understanding these as rights and restrictions are very good things to understand, that you can have right of way, but also owe somebody room or be restricted from what you're doing. That make sense? Yep. So this is one of my favorites. We talk about the rights and restrictions. We have the rules, and we have port starboard, clearly is a big deal. We have tacking, all those other ones, but we also have Rule 18.3, which restricts you as a port tack boat at a weather mark. Okay? And this is one of my favorite clips that I've seen in a while. It really kind of gives you some ideas. So we have J70s. This is North Americans, or Worlds actually, here a little while ago. These two guys, 5 to 25, but now all of a sudden, see these guys all on port? 16, 22, all tacking onto starboard and fouling the Jesus out of 26 and 40 and 5 or 6 boats, because those port tackers are restricted from making that tack. Even though they got onto starboard, acquired right away, there's a restriction there at the weather mark, which is 18.3, that says, like I said, I like to read them because it really gives me a chance to, to say out loud what the words are so that you understand. So I remember it. So 18.3 says, passing head to wind in the zone. If a boat in the zone of a mark to be left to port passes head to wind from port to starboard and is then fetching the mark, she shall not cause a boat that has been on starboard tack since entering the zone to sail above close haul to avoid contact, and she shall give mark room if that boat becomes overlapped inside her. Right? So all those, when those two boats tacked over onto port, from port to starboard, and we saw that guy flip over and have to try, get out of the way and do all sorts of things. So we see these two guys go across, they're clean, but this pack of 3, 4 boats right here, boom, 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 they jam it in here, they force 26 to go above head to wind, or above close haul, 40 goes above close haul, and nobody does a penalty. All right, so we got 4 fouls in that mess right there. Bang. 4 boats should have done turns and did not.
So Jeff, if you were reaching in because you overshot, then what?
Yeah, if you were reaching down, so if 40 had been reaching down, and when the inside boat tacked,
yeah,
and they had to go up to close haul, that's okay.
That's okay. That's what.
But if they have to go above close haul to avoid
Okay,
you,
so the key is above close haul.
above close haul.
Okay.
And that's probably, I would say, the most rule breakages I see on the water is right there. Is the, yes.
So the 2 boats that came on the port tack, you saying both of them foul
As long as you don't take me.
were in the wrong? Because you could say that second, if the outside boat wasn't there, the first boat might have been able to get around without anybody else.
Yeah, I mean, we'd have to go. That would be an interesting discussion in the protest room because. But however, the problem is that this, as they're coming into the mark, and you've got this guy coming in on port, and then you've got a guy inside him here, right? And then you've got the starboard tacker coming here. Both these boats go around. Well, this guy owes him room. Well, he owes a room. He doesn't owe him room to tap, unless he calls for an obstruction here. But this guy has to call for it way back here. They have to call before so they can get out of here so that they don't foul this guy. But because this guy doesn't let him tap, I'm going to guess that if I ended up in a protest hearing with this mess, this guy would get disqualified for not allowing him to keep clear of a starboard tack boat, and this guy would get it because there was no way that he was going to get that. Even in the absence of the yellow boat, the green boat wasn't going to get that in there.
Couldn't the green boat have ducked down?
Yes, green could have ducked, but if the green ducks, what else has to happen?
Yes, let
Just
yellow.
let yellow.
Right, because yellow's here. Now green has to really duck hard. And, then you get into a situation, but that's the right answer. Throwing it in where they did is the wrong answer because you're going to cause carnage. You need to cause, you now are going to do this. And the other thing that's going to happen is the other thing that we have in the rules says that you could turns, right, to exonerate yourselves. The 2 turns. However, that rule says if that doesn't count if you gain a significant advantage. Right, so I was in this situation, this is kind of this situation, except there was nobody inside me. But I was rolling into the mark at starboard tack, on the port tack ley line to the mark in the Etchells Worlds in 2014, and there were 70 of them lined up right here. I could have, if I'd have thrown it in there and fouled this guy, go do a turn, and I'm still in 10th place, right? But I can't. Because my only out is to go down the line and look for a hole to get across so that I can tack up. So by fouling this boat, I would have gained a significant advantage. I would have been in 10th place instead of what I ended up with was 80th.
So in that situation, and you went ahead and did that, and the person you fouled sees you do circles, then who protests you or the judges?
He can protest. No,
he can
can
still
protest.
protest you even though you
He can
do
still
circles.
protest.
Okay, all right.
Because he said you gained a significant advantage.
Yeah.
Okay, so he can still protest in that scenario. And I would say that if you don't, if you just do that and keep going, even if nobody protests you, you are breaking the cardinal rule, which is fair sailing. You're cheating.
What did you say? The cardinal.
Cardinal rule. You're cheating. Right? So that's something that drives me nuts. Watching that go on and, oh, well, I fouled him, but it was no big deal. He'll buy me a beer at the bar later, or a Coke, or whatever. That's cheating. Right? And I can get up on my soapbox about that. We won't do that.
It's a little gray area. Boats are approaching the weather mark on port, and they see that there's a gap where the starboard tack boat is overstanding. So as they're tacking, because they see the starboard tack is overstood, that sometimes that unburdened starboard tack boat will change his course and head for the mark and close you out, and claim that that's his proper course.
Well, there's a rule about that. And we can go back to those rules.
It can be subtle, though. It isn't a direct.
It's subtle, but he also, if he's the right-of-way boat, which he is throughout this, right?
Yeah.
If he alters while you're trying to do this, and that causes you to foul him, then he's in trouble.
Very hard to prove it, though. I
Oh,
understand
absolutely.
it's very hard.
But the question becomes, even though he alters down, that's fine. But the answer is, did he have to go above close haul here?
So,
Well, I've seen this a lot, where this guy gets it in there, he's been coming down, and then he goes up to close haul and starts screaming about it.
That's what I'm talking about.
But that's not, nobody's broken a rule.
but you had to alter course to prevent a collision, but it doesn't
But
matter.
that's because he altered.
He only has rights to close
Think
haul.
about it, right, he only has rights to close haul, but so, okay, so let's talk, this is one of my favorite ways to do this is, all right, so what rules apply right now? Rule 10, port starboard. So he's tacking, rule 13 applies to him, once he gets to head to wind. Right? He's altering down, so rule 16 applies to him, which is he has to give him room to keep clear. Once he becomes on starboard tack, and on starboard tack has nothing to do with his sails, it has nothing to do with, it all has to do with where he's pointing. As soon as he makes it to starboard tack, this guy is now bound by rule 11, but when we're lured, he has to keep clear. Okay? So we walk through those rules, and we see how those apply.
It's just so hard to prove that, though.
Well, but see, the point here is if I am quite certain that he didn't have to go above close haul.
Are you in the room? Does that, now you go to the room?
Well, if he's going to protest me taking the room, I'm going to go there. Because he's going to scream about it, and I'm going to say, but we were both sailing down to the mark.
It's a mess.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
If you sail close-winded boats, it's a mess.
Well, the Etchells is,
Star.
yeah, same thing. It is, but if he's coming down and he's cracked off, he's got a lot of discussion because he's got to prove to the judges that he was not cracked off or that he had to make a big alteration up.
I understand what you're saying. Usually just wants to be a lot of language back and forth. Nobody wants to go to the
Yeah, there's a lot of hollering risk
If you're
involved.
gonna get thrown out, it's gonna be green, right? I mean, yeah.
Yeah, start, if they go into the room and they find that green, the only one that could possibly be at risk is green, unless he comes down and hits them,
Right.
then we have a whole nother set of problems,
That's just.
because they're both gonna get
That's
tossed.
to just cross the start attack boat.
If you can, yeah.
No, is there anything with in the zone and not in the zone? Or
This all has to occur in the zone.
in the zone?
If we're outside the zone, where's our three-link zone here? Hold on. Right? Here's our zone. If this happens inside this zone, and he has to go above, that's when we break the rule. But because we're not inside this zone, Rule 18 doesn't apply at all. Rule 18 is smarter. Rule 18 doesn't apply at all, and now this is just a port starboard situation. And if you get it, as soon as you complete, he's got to keep clear. The going above, he might have to go above close hold, but that's on him.
So as soon as he goes past head to wind, red has to keep clear.
No, once green gets to the new starboard tack course.
Oh,
Because,
okay.
remember that? So we
Okay,
had
that's the
10, rule
difference.
10 is here.
All right,
Once he's pulling by.
okay.
Actually, I wouldn't even call it that, because he doesn't have to have a sales floor.
Well, yeah, past center.
He has, so he goes to head to, now, you know, our wind is probably over here, so he gets through head to wind. Now rule 13 applies, he's tacking. As soon as he gets to a close haul course, then he is now on starboard tack. He could have his, it could be a crash tack, his sails will be all flailing all over everywhere. But because he got there, and then starboard had to alter, or red had to alter, he's now on starboard, he's clear astern, he's give way, clear astern, give way weather, it's on him.
So the difference is in the zone, cross head to wind, out of the zone, on the new,
No,
no?
no. In the zone, it's always the same set. The only difference is in the zone, if, once this boat's on starboard, okay, so now we have the new rules applying, whether it's clear astern, whether it's 12 clear astern, or 11 windward leeward. If red has to go above close haul to avoid green, then rule 18.3 plays.
Okay.
Okay, so that's the thing to remember. So we just talked about that, the rights and restrictions. 10, 11, and 12, and 13 are rights. The rest are restrictions. Okay, so 14 and above are restrictions. That say you can't do something even though you're the right of way boat. So by until he gets pointed on a close haul course, he's not a right of way boat. He's a give way.
Okay.
Right? Once he's on a close haul course, he is now a right of way boat. But inside the zone, he's restricted by Rule 18.3. Outside the zone, he's not.
It's okay, don't show passes.
All right, so we read that rule, and we looked at it here. So you can see here, so this is what we just diagrammed up here, where yellow comes in, tacks and goes around, and blue clearly, even though at 2 and 3, even at 2 and 3, even though he laid off, and we bore off because he was a little overstood, because at 4 and 5 he had to go above close haul, yellow broke the rule. So the questions on that scenario? The next one is, so we'll talk about clear stern and clear head and overlapped, right? And so we have, this is the definition. So I talked earlier about how definitions are important, plus the preamble and all those other things, but the definitions are really important. You look up here, you can see that clear stern is in italics. So when you're reading and looking at your rule book, anything you see in italics means it has a definition. It's So you go to the definitions just like your dictionary, and it has definitions at the beginning, it explains what it is. Now this actually happens to be the definition here of clear stern and clear head. One boat is clear stern of another when her hull and equipment in normal position are behind a line, a beam from the aftermost point of the other boat's hull and equipment in normal position. The other boat is clear head. They overlap when neither is clear stern in any other scenario. However, they also overlap when a boat between them overlaps both. The term always applies to boats on the same tack. They apply to boats on opposite tacks only when Rule 18 is Mark 1, only when Rule 18 applies between them, or when both boats are sailing more than 90 degrees from the true wind. So, what this does is just makes it an interesting question, some interesting questions. So which of these boats are overlapped? So let's go through and ask some questions. How about red and white? How many people think red and white are overlapped here? We got 4 people. 5? Which one are you going? No? Yeah? Red and white.
They're opposite tacks.
But they're beyond 90 degrees to the wind. So the
They're
answer
beyond 90
is
degrees to the wind.
Overlap is
yes,
overlap.
they are overlapped. It's going dead downwind. They may be on opposite tacks, but they are overlapped. Okay? So this is another place where we talk about we have right of way, port and starboard, but we still have to say they're overlapped for other reasons.
Oh, for
When
other
we get to the
reasons.
mark.
Yeah.
How about blue and green? How many think blue and green are overlapped? More? Yep. And the answer is yes, they are. That's an easy one. They're both on starboard tack, going upwind, they're overlapped. How about blue and yellow?
No, one's close while others running.
Actually, the answer is
They're both on.
even though its line goes up like this, for blue, yellow is clearly behind it. Remember the phrase, a boat in between overlaps both. Since they're all on the starboard tack, even though that guy's going downwind, yellow overlaps green, green overlaps blue, so the answer is yes, they are overlapped. How about gray and orange?
Yes.
Which orange?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, the middle, one in the middle is red. So this one's red, this one's orange, that one's gray. It's 2 colors a little bit.
That's been down. Down thumb.
They are. They're both on port tack. Because they're on the same tack, they can be one can be going upwind, one can be going downwind. They are overlapped. What rule is going to come in? Anybody want to guess what rule comes into play at this moment? Rule 11. Right? How about pink and orange? Pink is the top left corner. Who thinks pink and orange are overlapped?
Same.
Oops.
Opposite tack.
Good for you though. So because the gray one may be in the middle, but because orange and pink are on opposite tacks, they are not overlapped. Kind of weird. It's kind of interesting. You get some little, oddball things going on in there, but that, that all really matters. I'm going to segue for just a minute, and it's kind of one of my favorites. I do a lot of umpiring for team racing and match racing and stuff. Years ago, when I was just getting into it, one of the international umpire from Sweden, she and I were working together. We were waiting around for wind, and she started talking. We were talking about rules, and she starts using the rule numbers. And I'm like, oh, come on, Charlotte, I don't know the numbers. And she said, come on, you don't know the numbers? I said, no. And she said, well, let me start you off with the numbers. She said, I'll teach you just like we teach our Swedish children. And it really makes sense. It's rule 10, rule 11, 12, 13, and 14. Port starboard, overlapped, clear ahead, clear stern, tacking, and contact. Don't hit, right? So there you go. A little easy way to remember the first 5 of them, right? So, mark room. This one's the most complicated rule of the book. There's actually a whole cadre of people around the world trying to figure out how to make this easier. Not sure how they're going to do it, but they're trying.
Oh yeah, we're testing it up in American.
More yellow.
We've done all sorts of things. We've done test rules, change this rule and that rule, and we've done a lot of different things here. So, mark room. Now this is a definition again. We can find this in the front in the definitions. So mark room is room for a boat to leave a mark. You notice that's in italics, so a mark actually has a definition on the required side. Also, room, which is what we're talking about here, to sail to the mark when her proper course, and proper course is a defined term, is to sail close to it, and room to round the mark as necessary to sail the course. Right, so if you have to give mark room, you've got to allow that guy to turn to go up to the next mark. However, mark room for a boat does not include room to tack unless she's overlapped inside and to windward of the boat required to give mark room, and she would be fetching the mark after her tack. Right, so you don't have to give room to tack unless that boat's inside you to weather. If you're going around the other way, you don't have to do that. So, rule 18, mark room. We've got 3 things going on here. We've got blue, gray, yellow, and green. At position 1, which is the first set of these, or no, the farthest out, blue is overlapped with green, right? We just went through that. So blue and green are overlapped, and yellow is clear ahead of green. All agree to those? And now, we see the 3 boat length zone there. So yellow is inside and ahead of green, and blue is overlapped with yellow and green, and gray is outside of blue. So at position 2, and in this case, we're turning left. Right, so it's a left turn here. Position 2, blue is still overlapped, and green has now overlapped yellow. Does green get room on yellow?
Yes.
The yellow is already inside the zone.
Yellow was at the zone and clear ahead of green. Green does not get room on yellow. Now, here's another place where we talk about restrictions. 18 is a restriction rule. Green is on starboard. You probably are screaming starboard a lot. However, because they are restricted by the mark room definition in rule 18, they don't get mark room. They have to go behind the port tack boats. However, blue is got to give, and gray, both have to give green room. So green has to go behind yellow, but can go inside blue and gray, if they can get there. Yellow is overlapped with everybody, so she gets room from everybody. Gray owes everybody room. Gray needs to just go wide and get out of here. Go fast, go away. Gray's toast, right? Now we're at a finish line. We have all those overlap things we talked about. We have the mark room stuff we talked about, but now we're at a finish, and different rules apply, and different definitions apply. So in this case, pink and green, what is pink? Pink's on starboard, green's on port. what happens here? If we're going downwind, pink and green are overlapped, right?
Room to finish.
They're overlapped inside the zone. Pink has to give green room to finish. Just enough to finish. Green can't keep going straight. Green needs to bear down, go straight to the mark. Because they have to pass close by it, as we heard in the definition. But pink owes green room to finish. Can't cut them out there. Can't chop them off the mark. On the flip side, blue and yellow, the same sort of scenario. Blue and yellow are overlapped because they're going downwind. However, they're overlapped and they're outside the zone. So there's no mark room available. And now it's, oh, well, wait a minute. Yellow starter tack. Port has to keep clear. We're not restricting them because we're not part of mark room. We're not inside the zone to the finish bar.
I mean, nobody draws a circle. They're always doing straight lines when you're coming up within 3 goal lanes.
Well, yeah, but
I mean, how would you know the circumference, the exterior of the circle?
As soon as blue jives, he's gonna have mark room in it. He's gonna enter the 3 public circle.
yeah, blue jives, and he's going to be a weather boat, but he's going to get to the weather market to that zone first. And he's going to get mark room on the pin, but he doesn't have mark room on the boat, ever.
So this happened to me once, going to downwind, and the lure boat is supposed to be sailing their definition of a proper course, right? Just coming into the finish.
Mhm.
I'm twinkling. And he took me way, way, way inside the circle, past the committee boat. I mean, well, past the pin, and then jived and came back in. At what point, I mean, I protested him, but at what point, if you're doing that, like accommodating the tide and blah, 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 do you need to get your bow pointed towards the pin and not that way to try and take me out? See, the idea was to take me out so then, you know, when we jived, I followed him across the line. Well, he did, but then, of course, when he jived,
But the answer is found in the definition of proper course, right? So you are a weather boat. You are bound by, the lured boat is bound though, however, by Rule 17, depends on how you got the overlap. There's 2 or 3 different scenarios here. If the overlap was created in a, not from behind, he can take you wherever, because you're both in the same tack.
But what happens when you get within that 3 boat length circle?
At that point, nothing, because he doesn't have a proper course restriction. Okay? I got 2 boats on port coming to this mark, right? This boat, we were down here, right? So this is a finish. So where's our racing boat? So here's our finish. We're up here, and we're both on starboard, right? We jive together like this, and now we're like this, right? So what rule applies here? Just Rule 11. Right? Only Rule 11. We get down in here, Rule 18 begins to apply, but this boat has to stay on its proper course. But the thing to remember is they don't have to stay on a proper course. There's no proper course restriction to them. Okay, they're not restricted by anything other than Rule 11, because once they get in 18, you owe them room. And there's no, but because they don't have a proper course, they can go where they want. So he can take you out here because you were overlapped, and he can go over here and finish wherever he feels like he wants to.
It happened this way actually, where he took me out here. I'm here, and then we jived and came in.
Oh, so
He still doesn't have.
Can you see?
Yeah, here. So we got 2 starter
So I'm
tackers.
green, right? And he
Right.
took me way over here, and then came back and went in.
Right, but so what Rule 11 is applying.
Right.
But when they get to the zone, 18 doesn't apply net because they're not trying to round the mark. Right, so only Rule 11 applies.
Yeah. So he can do that.
He can take it over here. Now when he comes back, because he doesn't have a proper course restriction, there is one scenario where he can't do that.
Why doesn't he have a proper course restriction?
Because when I set it up here, we were say we're here, and we jive into this overlap, it's just a standard rule 11, it's just an overlap. There's no proper course ever defined on red. They can sail wherever they feel like it. They can take you head to wind here. Because they don't have a proper course restriction. The only time it's different is if red
Came from behind.
was going faster and caught up from behind. Now Rule 17 restricts them to their proper course.
But he defines what it is.
He does, but
Okay, that's the problem.
however, that's true. But when he gets to the zone, so if he gets to the zone, he has to go to the mark because that would be his proper course under normal circumstances, in the absence of you.
Yeah, he would have never done that in the absence of me, absolutely. So,
Right,
okay.
but because if he doesn't have a proper course restriction, he can take you out here. That's tactical. He can do that
So what,
and come back.
so what's the rule that I'm protesting him on under? When,
Well,
if he had a proper course restriction.
if he had one, then you're protesting under Rule 17.
Rule 17, okay.
He had a proper course restriction and he didn't turn and go to the mark.
I don't wanna jump ahead, but how would that work in match racing? If you came down to the finish, and you chose to take your opponent to the other side of the finish line, as long as you went with them.
In match racing, it's wonderful. Doesn't matter how you gain that.
Yeah, it's died twice.
Match racing, we take Rule 17 out of the game.
So, can you, I don't know my numbers, so when you say a number, can you say what it is too?
Rule 17 is gaining an overlap from the start.
Okay.
All right, so in match racing, we take that rule out. So in match racing, he can just take it in the next week.
What happens in fleet racing, when you race against match races, they come up with some kind of hybrid rule on that.
Yeah.
You know, they're not quite one or the other.
Well, and, as long as you're outside the zone, I mean, he can't go above, at some point, he's got to be going. Here's another scenario, another thing to remember, to remind you, especially if you do, for you guys, it's not really matters, you're all the same little boats, but you get into the big boats. The zone size is 3 boat lengths, right? Well, that's not a very well-defined term, because how big is a boat, right? The first boat to touch the zone of 2 is the one that defines their zone. So the answer here is that I was in my etchels, 30 feet long, 30 and a half feet long, big, long, narrow thing. And I got to a zone, I got to 90 feet away from a mark. And it was a J70 behind me. She was pretty close. But she got to her zone, which is 60 feet. And I was going pretty slow, and she was coming pretty fast. When she got to her zone, the zone for her, she was overlapped inside me. But the answer is that because I got to the zone first, she doesn't get room. Even though when she gets to the zone that would apply to her and her other 20-foot boats, she is overlapped. Doesn't matter. She has to go by when I got to my zone. Because I was inside my 3-boat length zone and she was not overlapped. However, the other thing that can happen is, when we sail etchels, you sail, here's the weather mark or the leeward mark down here, we're going to go around this thing whatever direction, and I'm just going to press. I'm going to go right at it, right? Big spinnaker out front, and I'm just going right there. This J80 is ripping along and kept coming this way because she's reaching. And she gets that overlap from astern. So she's bound by Rule 17, right? But because a normal course for a 70, or J80 or something with an asymmetrical cutting, is to go this way, I am forced to go their direction. Okay? I have to go with them because that's their proper course. It's not my proper course, it's the lured boat's proper course. Now, we get out here, we need to start thinking about they have to jive and go. Because we got out here where they would normally jive and go. But that's how Rule 17 works, is it's about the boat whose proper course is, they get to define what proper course is. They can't just, they can define it, it's defined by their boat's sailing characteristics. Because the rule states proper course. A course a boat would choose in order to sail the course, which is a defined term as well, and finish, another defined term, as soon as possible in the absence of the other boats referred to in the rule using the term. A boat has no proper course before her starting sail. All right, so that's what proper course is, define that. So it's only, if the other boat wasn't there, what would they normally do? They would jibe at this point because that's their optimal jibe angle. If they go past that, they break the rule. Right, those are the only fleet race things I had for now. Does anybody have any thoughts, questions about fleet race stuff? Other scenarios, anybody?
Starting signal would be 5, 4?
Nope.
You say proper course.
Starting signal.
Like go.
Go.
Okay.
Anything before go, doesn't matter. So you've got that whole scenario we always have, which is you're sitting here waiting for your going, and this guy comes, you're sitting here, you're luffing, you're looking, you got a nice hole there, and this guy comes ripping in underneath it, and he goes up, he wants to force you out. You know, he got that from astern, but he can go head to wind, and you have to go with it.
So when that person does that, somebody in the meantime has come into windward of me this happened this weekend. Remember that cat? And we got sandwiched. And I'm like, I have no place to go. I tucked in my elbows and held my breath, and magically we didn't hit anybody. But I was perfectly clear, and then 2 boats came in on either side of me and made me a bologna sandwich.
Well, what rules are applying across those 3? Right? This boat's bottom, so they are a leeward boat. This boat's to weather, so rule 11 applies between these 2.
But I couldn't keep clear.
Rule 11 also applies between these 2. And so now, if you can work up the chain, this guy's the one that's got a problem. However, if you guys all go head to wind and there's space between you, I would say you're actually keeping clear at this point.
Thank God I did, from the grace of God. But I mean, yeah, it would have been a yellow. It's just
Right, you would have protest green, you would have protest yellow, green would protest you or yellow.
Well, what about green though? I mean, they have to give me time and opportunity to keep clear, and I couldn't keep clear because yellow was above me.
Well, the answer is that if green can come up here, so yellow's above you, right? So green starts taking you up, yellow tape goes up, you go up, yellow goes up, green goes up, and there's space in between them. You got clear.
The messaging is very difficult, though, we all wind up in a sales.
And it happens so fast.
And it happens, yes, it happens very fast, but the answer here is that what's going to probably happen is if this guy bails and this guy goes this way, and you go like that, or if you guys are really close together, you've got he bails out and goes away. He's giving you room to keep clear. You've kept clear. He's kept clear. Everything's clean. Now, keeping clear is not a defined term. It's one that you get a lot of questions about when you're, especially in match racing and team racing. Not as much fleet racing, but in match racing and team racing, we're going to allow these boats to get way closer together than we might if we were umpiring a fleet race, right? Because in match racing and team racing, that's how you're using the rules as a weapon, so we're going to allow you to get closer. However, there is a point where you're not touching, but the other boat is not allowing you to keep clear, or you are not keeping clear. So let's take this apart over here. This guy comes ripping around underneath you, and he comes in really close, and you're here. Even though he's really close, you can't just sit there, right? There's a little bit of a gap, and you need to be doing whatever you can do to keep clear. And that might include what you don't want to do, which is pulling your main and go forward and sail away from it. Because look what that does to you before the start. But you don't have a choice. You are required to keep clear. And that means doing everything you need to do to keep could be speeding up and getting closer to the line. You can't just sit there and say, well, I'm trying to keep clear. No, you've got to be doing something.
That's what people would say, like this weekend, they would say like, well, tiller's over.
Helm's over, yeah.
Helm's over, yeah.
Well, that always isn't enough. Sometimes it isn't enough.
Well,
You're not doing any of your sales, you're doing, there's a lot of discussion we'd have if we were in a protest room,
Yeah.
where you'd ask those questions, well, what else were you doing? Well, I just threw the helm over.
Right.
What'd you do with your mate? Did you pull it in at anything? Did you just start trying to get some speed up? Did you, whatever? There's a lot of questions that we would ask in a protest room about that. And that's what we look for when we umpire, whether it's fleet racing, match racing, team racing. We're looking for this boat to be doing something to keep clear. Trying to get away. Even if it's small moves of the helm, a little bit up, a little bit up, a little bit up, a little bit up, but they're trying to keep clear. They're keeping clear. There's space between them, at least touching, and they're trying to go away. They need to go faster, they need to alter up. Another one that I always hear is people yell, especially on the starting line, this guy takes him up and they get up here, and this guy falls over. Because he ends up on poor tack. He's screaming and yelling that he made me tack. Well, that's okay. As long as he didn't tack first. If you have to tack to keep clear, that's on you.
Yeah.
All right? You don't there's nothing that holds you on starboard tack there. You have to tack to keep clear.
Can I back up to the bologna sandwich real quick? So if I have been, and I came dangerously close to hitting both boats because they came in and squished me. So if I had been hit by both boats, I would have protested both. Windward for not, well, Windward, the yellow boat would have said, well, I didn't even know you needed room and opportunity to keep clear, or, I don't know.
Yeah. In that scenario, I would have protested both the yellow and green and just see what happens.
All right. Lasers go backwards a lot. You don't have rights when you're going backwards. On the line. They back when you sail, they go backwards, correct?
You do, yeah, you do.
They do?
Yeah.
What's their right?
They're on attack. They may be moving, but they're on attack. You are clear astern, you have to keep clear.
Okay. Somebody told me that. Who told me that? Rizzo? I asked that to somebody and they said they didn't have any rights. Okay. Drives me crazy.
A boat moving astern or sideways to the sideways to windward through the water by backing the sail. So if they back the sail hard enough that they now are sailing backwards.
Yes, that's what they do.
Then, okay, so if they're sailing backwards, yes, but
Okay.
if they roll in here and stop,
No.
and then, or if you get up in here, your head go in, or whatever, and you start floating backwards,
No, they.
that
they
doesn't
back.
matter.
They back.
It's if they're actually sailing backwards,
Yeah.
they have to keep clear of everybody else.
Okay, all right.
Unless that other boat is backing as well, and then it gets weird.
So the kids back when they're sailing, and back, they don't have any rights. So, what do we hail them to say, no rights? No, what rule do we?
What's rule number? You can just say that, well, the answer here is that they have to watch out for you. If something happens, it's on them. That's the thing, let's talk about that for a second. We all get out there on the water and we yell, starboard, no room, all those kinds of things, right? The real answer, those are good because that kind of reminds people that you're there and it wakes them up every now and again. But the real answer is that there are only 3 places in the rule book where you have to say something. Right? 3 places. First one is you must say protest if you want to protest. You've got to say that word, you've got to say that word right away. There are a couple of exceptions, but otherwise you've got to say it, you've got to say it instantaneously. And there's other things you got to do. Little boats, you don't have to worry about it. Red flag, but in big boats you do. You got a flag, you can do all that stuff. You must say the word protest. Second place is room to tack. If you are coming up to a construction, whether it's a starboard tacker, a starboard tack boat coming along here like this, and your 2 port tack boats, and there's a row of starboard tackers coming in, you know that there's no way that you can get through here. This boat, the lured boat, is allowed to call for room to tack. This boat has then two choices. And it doesn't matter even if they call for it way back here when they shouldn't. This boat has only two choices. It's a safety rule. This boat has two choices to either say, you tack, or to immediately tack. Okay, so that's the third place, the third set of words is you tack.
What was the point of saying you tack? I mean, why wouldn't they just go?
Because you could also do this, where you say you tack, he goes, you could duck him, and you can do what you want to do. All right, so the answer here is you tack, you have to keep clear of him, but you get to keep going where you want to go as opposed to where he wants you to go, which is that.
So if you ask and they tack, how long do you have until you have to tack?
Simon.
You got to go with that immediately. You cannot sail any further.
We got away with it. I got a lift, I couldn't help it.
It's like
You
a
cannot. You call for room to tack, you must tack
As soon as they tack.
as soon as they
All
tack.
right.
If they just
It was
tack,
close.
you got to go.
No, it was close. Okay.
No, if you go a half a boat length, you've gone too far.
Gotcha. So in the future, we need to watch that from
So you need to decide where you're calling it.
yeah,
You
yeah,
have to give them enough room to tack and let you keep clear.
yeah.
But you've got to make sure that you're not calling it too early where you go, oh wait, I got a lift, I'm going to go, and now
Yeah,
I'm
that's
going
what
to go.
happened.
Nope. Nope, you broke the rule.
We didn't get protested, so it
No, you
doesn't.
go like, you got what somebody else didn't fully understand or didn't care. They were going to go anyways, so they just. But you really broke the rule, and if it's in frostbite, you should take your 20% penalty because you broke the rule.
No, it wasn't frostbite.
Anything else? Anybody else? Fleet race? Any fleet race questions?
Is there a rule? I'm sort of dumb, questions. Somebody called something about when we're coming in before the start, behind the committee boat, and it's called room at the committee boat before the start, and what is that?
That's.
It's about
Yeah, right. It depends on, there are two things that happen here. If there's room to go between these two, and he starts to go in there, and if there was room at the instant he started, he got the overlap, you have to let him in. You can't run him into that.
Oh, right, okay. If
However-
damage would occur.
It doesn't matter whether damage occurs or not.
All right,
If he touches that, if you force him to touch it,
yeah, okay.
you've broken the rule.
So as long as there's,
If there was room at first. Now, if there isn't room, and he comes in like this and starts yelling room,
right, right,
yup,
yeah. And
that's like it.
That's what I told
That's the
him.
old barging
Okay.
rule.
Yeah, okay.
Yep,
Right.
that's typically what's called barging from the old days, but
Alright.
that is, there wasn't room. He came in from somewhere else because, as we know, marked room isn't turned on.
Did that rule change?
Restart.
All right.
So rule 18 doesn't apply here. Right? 18 doesn't apply. He can't just force his way in
He
there.
was just trying to pull something on me. Didn't work.
The only time that it does actually happen is if you've gone up here, this guy's kind of waiting next to you, there was never room for him, right? Then the gun goes off. You can't just sit here.
Hold it.
You have to go your proper course, because you're a little boat. And now you can go off. You've got to let him in. But that's once the gun goes off. But that's,
Intrepid Gretel.
what's that?
Intrepid Gretel.
Yeah.
What?
All right, let's go.
Yeah.
Two questions.
Yes.
Seven. One, it's been years since I've been on a race course. Obstruction.
Mhm.
So like, say you're racing up here at the academy, and you got the seawall on your leeward bow, you're going upwind, obstruction, they have to tack, or does that mean no longer?
Well, no, you don't call for obstruction, you call for them to tack. Yep. As long as you are on a close hauled course going towards that wall, that counts. If you're not on a close hauled course, it doesn't work.
Cool. Second, used to be something called Master B.
Oh, yeah.
That's still around?
No.
No?
That Master Beam hasn't been here in
25.
30
years.
quads, four quads probably.
I don't know, 4 quads.
3 quads, that's 36 years.
Okay.
Master Beam hasn't been here since the 80s, 90s. It's a long time.
Sounds about right.
It's a long time.
So in obstruction, say you're both going downwind and you're the leeward boat, but you're slightly ahead, and your obstruction, is on your course going downwind. But if you were to go to, close haul, you could clear it. Would you have to go to close haul to clear that obstruction?
So we're going, let's see what we can create the obstruction
Right.
that we're talking about here. Like this. And we're going in here like this.
Right.
At this point, this guy's kind of out of luck. He's got to figure out what he's going to do with it. But this is an obstruction
Right.
to both boats. So if you decide to go down and cross it this way, you have to give him room
Right. So say
to
the
go
other,
past it.
so say it's the other scenario, like, if you don't mind.
No, please do, because I'm
Say,
not quite
say
visualizing.
like this is the naval academy seawall right here, and this is your course, and you're both going downwind. So if you head up,
Yeah,
you can
well,
clear it.
yeah.
But if you wanted them to jive, you couldn't call obstruction.
No,
You'd
because,
have to head up and
yeah,
go head to
because
wind.
you can't,
Right.
you're going around the seawall this way, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the water's out here.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the, the extension of the seawall, because you're the leeward boat, you're gonna go around it this way, you're gonna pass it here.
Mm-hmm.
Your proper course depends on how you made how you got that overlap. You can come up to your proper course, which is to pass this. You can even go up further if you have full luffing rights. He has to keep clear of you, because in this scenario, because you are the right-of-way boat, you're the leeward boat, you just go where you want to go.
Right.
Unless if you came in like this, now all you can do is just go up, if you came in like this, you could take him up enough just to get past it, because that would be your proper course.
So, well, say if you wanted, so you wanted to jive, say if you wanted to jive, make him jive, right? And, so you're coming in and you can't, and you say obstruction, and he says no.
Where's the wind coming from? Because I'm confused how you try and make somebody jive.
You might have to come from the other tack there.
Yeah, I guess so.
Now, if we did
Follow-up
this,
question, yeah.
yeah, so I mean, if you did it this way, where you're this guy, the problem is, if you decide to go here, this is, you're both on port here, you go down to, you've got to let him in there, because he's, that's an obstruction to both of you.
You gotta give him room.
You're clearing, yeah, so that's that way. I mean, if you're coming in here, that would want you to go this way, that would confuse you, I'm not sure.
In a team race scenario, could you take both of you to the wrong side?
Team race scenario, go both to the wrong side. Well, it depends on your proper course. We go backwards.
I mean, if you have buffing rights, I guess you could.
Yeah, if you left and right, you could, yeah, take them out all you want. Take them out. That's a standard team race move.
It's no different, yeah.
All right, let's talk about some team race stuff. Let's check that one. All right, so we got special disciplines in sail, match race and team race, which are a lot of fun. We all really enjoy doing these. We've got match racing one-on-one. We're using the rules as a weapon. We all know how that works. It's a delayed penalty, so that's always fun because you don't have to take your penalty right away because then you can try and get one on somebody else. That's match racing. And Appendix C, like I was talking about, that big fat set of rules, Appendix C applies. Now what Appendix C does is it takes a whole bunch of things and it changes them. So we talked about that a bit ago. It takes Rule 17 and turns it off. Nope, no Rule 17, that doesn't matter. You can take them to the moon as long as you have an overlap. Team race. Typically 3-on-3, but now we're seeing a lot more 2-on-2. Although you people who came up through Opties, there's a lot of 4-on-4. There's even more 4-on-4 happening too. So some special events of 4-on-4. The Boreland Cup is coming up here shortly. It's 4-on-4. Some other inter-club things are 4-on-4, so it's kind of fun. Again, you're using the rules as a weapon. And then you're also, with the immediate penalty, you have to take your penalty when somebody protests, but it's competitor choice on whether or not you protest or how you take it, when you take it, whether you take it on immediately or you wait for the umpires to call. Appendix D is the one that tells us how they change the rules and how the penalties go. And it's clearly all, we hope it's umpired as much as possible. So in match racing, we changed the definition. Finish, marked room, proper course, or the zone, because the zone in match racing is only 2 boat lengths long. We changed proper course so that they don't have to go, there is no proper course really, like ever. We changed marked room so that the inside boat gets it even if they're on port tack. It's some weird stuff going on there. And then finish so that they can go around, hook around the finish line and when you get across the line. Some of the rules we have, we add Rule 7, which is last point of certainty. It's something that we use as umpires in both match and team. And that is, if I as the umpire am watching and I know that you are not overlapped, and then it gets a little sketchy, I'm not sure, and something happens, there's a foul, I go back to what I know for sure, which is you're not overlapped. And we change a whole bunch of other rules here. Delete 16.2, 17, delete a bunch of stuff. In Appendix D, the team race rule, we go back, we change that to 2 boat length zone. All right, so there's only 2 boat lengths there. We add in Rule 23.3 and we change some other rules to make it get more interesting and go from there. We have a lot of team race questions here, so let's go look for a second and see what changed there. So we add. We added Rule 23.3, which is when boats in different races meet. So this is all about 2 different races. Any change of course by either boat shall be consistent with complying with a rule or trying to win their own race. So changes of course and alteration, they can't, if you are racing another team, but you know that team over there is kind of winning that one and you need them to lose, you can't go chase them down because you're not trying to win your own race. Right? Does that make sense? And we alter 18 with the overlaps. We alter, we cause, typically you'll see that in a lot of times we talked about the room to tack rule a minute ago. You need to look at your sailing instructions, and that's probably something I forgot to mention in the beginning is the sailing instructions can also change some rules. So the sailing instructions, no matter what event you go to, even though you've been to that event 1,000 times, you should always look at the sailing instructions. So if they change something, you need to know it. They could change the sailing instructions, they could say that Rule D 1.1D applies, and that says that when you call for room to tack, Not only do you have to say the words room detect, you have to wave your arm in the direction you want to go. You're sailing along the port and you wave to the port side of the boat so that you know they know. It's two things. One, that's so that your competitor knows even more that you want to tap, but it tells the umpires that you're calling for room attack. But you have to say the words as well. You just can't wave your arm. So, team racing, 18-2 giving marker. So the standard is above. And in 18B, we add the word or she later becomes clear ahead when another boat passes head to wind. Okay, so you come into the zone down here. You're in your standard, you're at mark 3. And green and yellow are racing against each other. And they're overlapped. Yellow has to give green room, or green has to give yellow room, right? But now, yellow goes up like this, and taps, goes through head to wind. And now, especially if she's behind, green doesn't have a mark room obligation anymore. So the scenario we're talking about here is so yellow and green are going here, and green takes yellow up a lot. If green goes through head to wind, yellow doesn't have to give green marker anymore. Does that make sense? So yellow and green, yellow owes green marker room, but because green is a lured right away boat, they can go where they want to go. They don't have a proper course obligation yet. Rule 17 doesn't apply. So they can take you up. Right?
Even though you're in the zone, or you're not?
Yes, in the zone.
Okay.
Yep. And so up we go, like this. If green goes through head to wind, and yellow can spin faster, and once they get through head to wind, there's no overlap. Yellow no longer owes green room. But if you get this scenario, where you both go way up, right, and there's a little bit of a gap, and yellow gets a chance and they turn down really hard, and green turns down really hard. Yellow now would seem to be the inside boat, right? However, this all happened in the zone. So yellow still has a mark room obligation to green. They cannot go here. They have to figure out how to let green go here and then go there. I see some confusion there.
Because they didn't.
They never left the zone. They never went past head to wind. Yep.
It's only past the wind, can you jive and still have?
Yeah, just like I showed right there, exactly. So green comes in, right? So let's say it's really close here, and we go way up, and now both boats, yellow has a shot, and they can jive inside. They jive inside, green jives, everyone above head to wind. Yellow still owes a mark to green. Green still owns the zone and owns that mark. Yellow has to go home. Right? So that's the same. That's what we're talking about there. We got two different scenarios there where yellow and green. Because they got here, yellow went up. He came back. Green still owes yellow room. It's up here. In blue, same game, but he went through head to wind, so he doesn't, it changes the obligations. Because blue went through head to wind. Thereafter, yes.
Why did yellow have to go out of the survey?
Well, I don't know. It's the diagram shows him, but he went outside the zone, but came back. The green still has an obligation. Because it says when one of them reaches the zone, she shall thereafter owe mark room, unless the boat goes through head to wind. So if boats overlap when the first reaches a zone, the outside boat at that moment shall thereafter give the inside boat marker. If boat is clear ahead when she reaches a zone, or later becomes clear ahead when another boat passes head to wind, the boat clear astern shall thereafter give her a marker. But in this case, she doesn't go through head to wind. Even though she went out of the zone, it really doesn't matter. She still has to get marker because they will overlap and stay overlap all the time. Didn't go through head to wind. It's the thereafter clause that gets everybody.
Even though they both left the zone.
Yep. So that's step 1, 2 as they're coming in. So green has to yellow and blue here. They both go up. They both leave the zone. Yellow turns down. Blue goes through head to wind. And now green, who was clear astern and did owe mark room, no longer owes mark room, but they owe mark room to yellow. And 6 is in trouble. Match racing, you want to talk about that one, or do we want to just skip match racing?
We don't need to talk about match racing. Team racing's fun.
What's that?
Team racing's fun.
I like them both. I like them both. Yeah, this is the one that's a little wonky in match racing where these boats go, even though the one boat's inside the other boat, the blue port boat, the starboard tack boat, the yellow boat, is the right-of-way boat throughout this. However, because there's a zone issue, they've changed the zone such that if blue forces yellow goes past their proper course, if yellow goes past their proper course and forces blue to alter course, then yellow's broken the rule. But blue always has to keep clear. But yellow can't go beyond their proper course to mess with the port tack boat. So here it goes here. Now they're there. Yep, 3 should have tacked by now. But they forced blue to alter. So here we keep going way outside, and yellow broke the rule. Blue did not break any rules because they kept clear. All right, so we'll go back into team racing. So we got 2 different choices. You guys, the kids are playing the game with the digital bottom left corner. We call that the digital N race course. From start, mark 1, mark 2, mark 3, mark 4, finish. The adults typically play the port box. Start, finish in the middle of the leg on the right side of the course. Mark 1, mark 2, but you turn left there, not turn right. Down, turn left at mark 3, turn left again at 4, and finish. So we get scenarios get different, mostly, well, always up here. Because up here you turn left and turn left. Here you turn right and turn right. And so the port starboard is different up there than it is with a port box, right? So the port box, our scenario here would be that it's the same, this is the same scenario that we talked about way back in the beginning. Well, 18.3. Yellow causes blue to go above close haul. Yellow breaks the rule. As they come in, you can see that blue has to go up and there. So yellow has broken the rule here. Now, in digital N, we look at it differently. Both boats are overlapped. Here, we come up to the mark. Yellow has to give blue room to tack. Because they can tack and be fetching. And they go around.
So you can't take, wait a minute, can you back up a second? So yellow has to give blue, so can blue take yellow out? You know, does blue have to tack, or, I mean, obviously if I'm yellow, I'm gonna slow down and sneak.
Well, blue wants to turn right, because you want it to turn right.
Well, not if you're trying to hold somebody else or your teammate is sneaking in behind you, right?
Well, yeah, but if blue could go head to win here and wait.
Yeah.
becomes the teammate that tries to get in between yellow and the mark is outside, was outside zone, came up through. So they're not gonna be able to get there because yellow's right beside the mark.
Well, if,
You'd have to be over, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
I understand what you're saying, but
yeah.
in this scenario, that would.
yeah, not that particular,
Yeah.
I'm just thinking ahead and.
Yeah, you could do that, but if you're over here, the problem becomes if you're further away from the mark, right? So we got these two boats. Yep, and now this guy can go here. What he needs to do is have him stay over that.
Right,
Trap him
right.
here.
Yeah,
But
traffic,
if they go like this,
yeah,
he can go and go, you know,
Yeah,
get out of here
sure,
because we're going through head to wind.
but it is allowed to trap him and.
Oh, yeah, you
not
can
so
force him to keep
teammates
going out here,
can-
yeah.
Okay,
But he can go, but see, the thing is though, because he's a right away boat, when they get here, his defense is to go head to wind,
okay,
right? He doesn't want to go through wind,
all right,
but he can go head to wind, right, and close off that gap.
okay.
That's the defense for that move.
You're saying the defense is don't get pinned in the first place, and if you can round on his transom and then end up being that boat on the inside, and then you become the pinner. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, turn left here, blue and yellow come through,